this meeting to order. Mary, roll please.
Cloyd, Artzer,
Here.
Howard,
Here.
Redline, Showalter.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We'll start off with public comment. Do we have anybody down? Okay. Move on to the consent agenda, items A and B. Item A is the 4/6/2026 commission meeting minutes, and item B is appropriation ordinances 2026-08, 2026-08A, and 2026-P08. Any questions, comments, or concerns about the consent agenda?
I move that we approve consent agenda items A and B.
Have a motion by Commissioner Howard,
Second.
second by Commissioner Artzer. Mary, roll please.
Yes.
Cloyd, Howard,
Yes.
Redline, Showalter.
Yes. Thank you. We'll move on to presentations and proclamations. We'll start with our employee recognition, Lee Ann Taylor. Kent, do you want to start or you want me to?
You can go ahead. I'll just basically state that Leanne retired here recently at the end of 2025. She started as a municipal court clerk in 1992 and then served as municipal judge and municipal court clerk in 2004. Combined those positions into one. And from 2004 until just a little while ago, that's what Leanne did for the community and for the city of Goodland. So she retired. She is now on a contractual basis as municipal judge, but that's where we're at. And I know you wanted to do something a little more official for Leanne. So.
All right. Well, I just wanted to tell you, Judge, on behalf of the entire city of Goodland City Commission, we certainly appreciate all of the time and effort that you spent the last 34 years of your life, not only dedicating time between 8 and 5, but many times after hours and early morning and late at night, and had an opportunity to work with you in several different capacities, and always a consummate professional, so I appreciate those times. So we'd love to have you come up here. We have a token of our gratitude to give to you and take a picture with you if possible. We do not have to do a picture. You are the judge. If you order that tab, not happen. You don't have to.
No picture?
No picture? Everyone's.
Yep, thank you.
Come back there.
Oh, okay. She's gonna allow picture.
None of those trays. Yeah. All right. Good.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item B, the Arbor Day proclamation for 2026. I have the proclamation in my hand unless you want to say anything.
No, sir.
Okay. So we do have our Arbor Day proclamation here. It's again an honor for us to participate in Arbor Day. We've been in Tree City, USA for how many years now? Danny, do you know? 46 years we've been in Tree City, USA. So thank you for everybody's efforts that make that possible. So I'll go ahead and start here with our Arbor Day proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for planting trees, and whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind, water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, and whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business and areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees wherever they are planted are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, and whereas Goodland has been recognized as Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation for 46 years and desires to continue its tree planting practices. Now therefore, we, the city of Goodland, do hereby proclaim April 24th, 2026 as Arbor Day in the city of Goodland, and encourage all citizens and businesses to join in the celebration therefore. And we urge all citizens to plant trees to promote the well-being of this and all future generations. I hereunto set my hand to cause the seal of the city of Goodland, Kansas to be affixed this the 20th day of April, 2026. Danny, are we gonna do, plant some trees on the 26th?
Yeah, Friday at 1:30 at Chambers Park, we're gonna plant a couple American elms.
Friday at 1:30. Sounds good. I will be there.
I will too.
All right, we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. Ordinance 1817, amending the fence regulations, increasing the setback from the backside of the curb and maximum allowable height within the city of Goodland in sections 19-607 zoning regulations. Invite our code inspector, Zach Hildebrand, to the statement.
This has been on my pipeline of things. There's parts of the code that refer to different heights and distances, so this is just cleaning it up. The distance from the backside of the curb going to 6 feet instead of 4 feet is brought to light with the fence on Caldwell that a lot of people had issues with, and it's actually 5 feet off of the curb. So this is just gonna put a little more room there, and then in the event of a sidewalk being placed, ADA sidewalks are 5 feet, so 6 foot would allow for a foot of room there for equipment and people to work.
Good.
Since this is the, dealing with the zoning regulations, this section was actually reviewed by the planning commission and was recommended for approval by the planning commission as well.
Good. Any questions, comments, or concerns about ordinance 1817? If not, I'd make a motion to approve ordinance 1817.
I'm doing some reading just a second. So you talked about the house on Caldwell. Is this going to affect any other properties, do you know of?
No, if it's already there, it's grandfathered.
Okay, so not a
No.
big deal.
No.
But this was just kind of brought forward because of that property. Okay.
I'll second.
I have a motion by myself, a second by Commissioner Howard. Mary, roll.
Howard,
Yes.
Redlin, Archer,
Yes.
Cloyd, Showalter.
Yes. Move on to item B, ordinance 1819, amending the text of chapter 4, section 801, regarding the location of fences on premises to be no nearer than 6 feet to a city curb or curb line.
This is just a reflection, so our zoning code matches our municipal.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 1819.
I'll second that. I have a motion by Commissioner Archer, second by myself. Mary, roll please.
Archer,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Redlin, Cloyd, Showalter.
Yes. Item C, ordinance 1820, amending the text of chapter 4, section 803 to reflect the zoning districts that are recognized in the section on fences.
There was a residential 3 and then mobile home park, with neither of which we have in our code. So we got rid of those and just have our actual zones in there now.
Just cleaning up the language.
Yep.
Okay. Questions, comments, or concerns about ordinance 1820?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 1820.
A motion by Commissioner Archer,
Second.
second by Commissioner Howard. Mary, roll.
Cloyd, Archer,
Yes.
Redlin, Howard,
Yes.
Showalter.
Yes. Item D, resolution 2026-08 revised authorizing the submission of EDA FY 25 disaster supplemental grant application. Sorry, I went on real quick like I was getting ready to let you talk again, Zach, my fault. I'll let Kent talk about this one though.
This is just the commission passed this resolution at last meeting. However, there's been a little bit of the revision of the numbers on the actual grant submission. So in order to match those up, basically, the final paragraph on the first page, the be it resolved by the City Commission of the City of Goodland that the city be authorized to make an application to the EDA for a disaster supplemental grant requesting 5.4 million in change, which the city will match with 20% of the cost of the project, currently estimated 1.3, for the total project cost of 6.8. When the grain mill and bakery increase the power requirements from what they had originally told us of a little over 8 megawatts, they went to over 13 megawatts. The numbers changed a little bit. Actually, not as much as both Dustin and I thought right off the bat, but it ended up about $500,000 more for the project overall. So when you already have a $6 to $7 million project, but you're almost increasing 75% the amount of power needed, that didn't seem, that was a little surprising. So, in a good way, in a good way. But in order to have the resolution match the cost estimate within the preliminary engineering report, that's why I have the revised resolution for you and request the consideration of the commission.
Well, I certainly continue to keep my fingers crossed that Merchant McIntyre is able to come through for us and provide some assistance on that. We could certainly use it, for sure.
Do we think the higher amount will hurt our chances of potentially getting, no, okay,
That's not a big number
not big enough.
on the federal level to be a concern for them, or at least they haven't indicated as such.
Yeah.
We'll get to find out here shortly, hopefully.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2026-08 revised.
Have a motion by Commissioner Howard,
Second?
second by Commissioner Artser. Mary, roll.
Artser,
Yes.
Cloyd, Howard,
Yes.
Redland, Showalter.
Yes. Move on to formal actions. Item A, the Animal Control Services Contract for 2026.
This is for animal control services. We had a previous agreement about a little over a year and a half ago, approved for the impound services that are provided by Paw Wash. This is for Kathy to provide animal control services, which is gets involved a lot with other various members of the code enforcement team, whether it's code enforcement, whether it's police officers, whether it's dispatch, gets called on a number, and then comes to appear in court if a person is cited for various violations of the animal code. Right now, the current contract, or the amount on the current contract has been $1,500 a month since 2020. And this would increase it, or the proposed amount is to go to $1,700 per month. I asked Kathy if she had a number of hours involved. Obviously it varies depending on the cases that get involved. And you've probably seen a number of cases here recently with various buildings that we've had to take care of. But I can tell you that it's more hours than you would want to know about that she's involved. And she's available from any of the officers basically on an everyday basis for the entire year. So.
Yeah, I know she doesn't just respond on, even weekdays, and I mean, she's out there holidays and the weather's bad, doesn't really matter. She's there if she's called, so certainly appreciate her efforts throughout the years to take that onus off the police department and be able to handle that.
Yeah, I'm extremely grateful for Kathy, because she has helped us personally with neighborhood disputes. She has been the one to help us when our cat passed away. She's been there for us through a lot, so I have no problems with the going up to 1,700. It is in our budget to do that.
Yes.
Okay. So, you need a motion?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to update the animal control services contract from $1,500 per month to $1,700 per month.
Have a motion by Commissioner Artser,
Second.
second by Commissioner Howard. Mary, roll.
Howard,
Yes.
Archer,
Yes.
Floyd, Radlin, Showalter. This is really throwing me off. The two of them
Sorry.
are gone. No.
Yes. Move on to item B, the Merchant McIntyre Limited Contract Extension.
Are they here? They are?
Yes.
I told them approximately 7:20, so, or 5:20, which is 7:20 their time in, near Washington DC, so.
Pretty
Oh,
close.
early.
Can you guys hear us?
Hello? Can you hear us?
We can.
I can hear you now?
Okay, great. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear you, Kent, there. I assumed you were giving us a little bit of an introduction.
That he was. We're ready for you guys to start if you want to go ahead.
Great, sounds good. Well, good evening. Just to remind you folks, so I'm Julia Angelotti. I'm Senior Vice President. I'm joined by my colleagues this evening, Charlie Fissner, who's a director here at Merchant McIntyre, and Thomas Cordry, one of our senior associates. Thank you, first of all, Mayor Showalter and City Commissioners for the opportunity to present again on Merchant McIntyre's accomplishments over the last 6 months. We greatly value our partnership with the city, and we hope to continue our work to secure federal funding for the city. Before I kind of outline what we've been working on, I wanted to say really just how much of a pleasure it has been to work with the city staff on federal funding applications. Kim Brown, Mary Volk, Andrew Brunner have been hugely helpful to our team as we submitted a FY27 congressionally directed spending or an earmark request actually just recently, and then we're obviously continuing to work towards that EDA disaster supplemental grant as well. So thank you to the city staff. Real quick, just to run through kind of to date what Merchant McIntyre has done. As you know, in the fall of 2025, we conducted our resource inventory and developed that federal strategy and grants grid. From that strategy and grid, it was indicated that we would be working on a FY27 earmark application as well as the EDA disaster supplemental program for the Grain Melon Bakery. So we requested 1.643 million in congressionally directed spending with Senator Moran. That was done middle of last month, and the senator actually was required to submit his selected projects to the Senate Appropriations Committee today. Today was the deadline that he needed to do that. We should be able to find out whether or not the senator put the city's project forward for further consideration by the committee by May 6th. So that's sort of the last date we would likely hear, but any time between tomorrow and then we could get word from the senator or his staff that he put forward the project. So just to give you a little bit of look ahead, once or if your project was actually selected by the senator, it then goes obviously to the Senate Appropriations Committee where they will be doing their hearings and their markups of their legislation over the months of June and July. And Merchant McIntyre team would obviously be tracking that process very closely. There's a couple of things that we can do just advocacy-wise, even after the senator has actually selected your project, and sort of the onus kind of lies in the Senate Appropriations Committee to get that project funded. We also have developed, or are continuing to develop, an application, as you noted earlier in the meeting, with the Economic Development Administration, the EDA, for $5 million for the Grain Melon Bakery. That process has required us to engage significantly with EDA representatives, as well as members of the congressional delegation to advocate for the city's economic wanted to now maybe kick it over to Charlie to give a little bit more detail on where we are with the EDA disaster supplemental grant application, what our plans are for submission. Charlie?
Thank you, Julia. Hope you all can hear me all right. It's wonderful to be with you this evening. As Julia indicated, I want to spend a little bit of time kind of diving a bit deeper into the EDA application, which I'm sure you've been hearing about in today's meeting and in previous meetings around some of the requirements that have to actually come out of the City Commission for the project, in addition to Merch McIntyre's approach, from the outset. So, as you're all aware, we've been developing this application now over many months. Economic Development Administration disaster supplemental funding applications are very comprehensive in nature. I'm sure Ken can provide some of the items that we've been working on with him related to the application, such as preliminary engineering reports, environmental narratives, but we've made fantastic progress with a lot of support from Kent and the team and city officials, and are now preparing to formally submit the application on April 30th, before April 30th. This will request, close now with some changes to a few of the specifics in terms of the electrical capacity of application, closer to $5.5 million in federal funding. And, this is all related to expanding the electrical capacity at the grain mill and bakery in support of that project. We have selected the April 30th date as our target submission date based on interactions with the EDA representative, regional representative. For Kansas, his name is Mark Worthman. If you recall likely from our original discussions on the project, the way the EDA handles their application development process is really via a co-create process. So they want to hear about the project early on, and then kind of work alongside you the entire time. To date, MM has set up and handled 3 separate meetings with the EDA representative, Mark Worthman. The initial meeting was to kind of pitch the project, if you will, and the next 2 meetings were quite substantive in nature, discussing project details, ensuring he was aware of the ongoings at the city level and knew all the project outcomes. During those meetings, he would let us know a bit of the EDA review timeline, which I wanted to share with you all and give you some context behind that April 30th date. The EDA review process begins on a regional basis. The EDA as a whole is broken up regionally, and this project, Mark Worthman, is attached to the Denver region. Projects are reviewed initially on a regional basis, and then final approval happens in headquarters in DC. As of now, the Denver region is batching projects per month. So it doesn't matter if we submit April 2nd or April 30th, we'll go with the April projects. Once we have our project in within April, the Denver region will hold its investment review committee meeting in June. Typically, they'll have 1 meeting, but if they have a lot of projects, they'll have 2 within the month. So after submission, we will have some more formal review occur in June, where Mark Worthman has to essentially advocate for the project in front of the IRC, which is why it's very critical our engagement we've had with him on the front end. After that review process has been completed and there's a favorable outcome, the EDA will typically provide you all with what they now call a curing letter. This letter is going to indicate their interest in funding the project. However, it is likely to include some additional requirements and stipulations prior to receiving a reward agreement. Merchant McIntyre has navigated this process before. We've been successful in securing EDA dollars previously, and moving forward, we would be well positioned to help you all navigate the process from EDA submission to curing letter to receiving your award agreement. That would be likely to happen, after that June review, sometime in late summer, early fall. Like I said, we have this existing relationship with Mark, and we have helped, local municipalities in the past work through some of the EDA requirements that come with their favorable review. It is a very typical process. Most of the time they have additional follow-up questions to our application. So I think we'll hold at the end for questions, so I'm just going to continue forward. But if you have any questions specific to that process and the project as a whole, I'd be happy to take that at the end. I I believe as well, there is in your commissioner package, or at some point you would have received a memo. So now I'm going to move a bit from the EDA project and talk a little bit about some potential projects for future federal funding that should be listed within your memo. So we highlighted 3 of those opportunities. I'm going to begin with one, which is the EPA Brownfields Assessment Grant, and then I will turn the mic over to my colleague Thomas to discuss some of the surface transportation opportunities, one of which we've already begun development on or had initial conversations with the city on. So if you're unfamiliar with EPA Brownfields Assessment Grants, these are grants that are focused on cleaning up polluted or contaminated properties where there's no real liable party. So if there was a prior industrial site or private residence where illicit controlled substances occurred at and are currently housed, and there's no appropriate party to clean up the property. Once the city of Goodland can work through retaining ownership of the property, or if they already own it, they can pursue EPA Brownfields grants to assess and then clean up that property. There's a few. That's basically the big stipulations. If you get into an application, there's some additional items to consider, but on the whole, this is a program run by the EPA that looks at assessing and then cleaning up contaminated properties, whether that's from controlled substances, petroleum, or other hazards. We're happy to, again, answer more questions and provide additional details on that program, but we did want to make you all aware of the opportunity should you feel there's a property or an application that would fit. With that in mind, I'll now turn the mic over to Thomas to let him talk a little bit about some of the other opportunities we've put forth for consideration.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, commissioners, and Ken. Appreciate you guys' time this evening. Moving forward to a couple more opportunities that Merchant McIntyre has identified for the city that we could potentially start working on over the next 6 months. The first one that we spoke about a little bit during our last presentation to the commission a couple months ago is DOT's Safe Streets and Roads for All program. This program has actually been released by DOT. It was released a couple weeks ago with a submission deadline of May 26th. So any potential extension of the service agreement would certainly cover the development and submission of this application. This program, the kind of overarching goal is to reduce and eliminate traffic fatalities in communities across the country. For this request, specifically, the city would be requesting planning dollars to develop a comprehensive safety action plan. And what that means and what that entails is generally a large traffic study of the city's roadways to identify some of the areas in the city where traffic fatalities occur at higher rates. To complete that comprehensive safety action plan, we haven't finalized a number yet. We've been working with Ken, Andrew, and Mary to get a final budget number, but we expect a request to be somewhere around $250,000. And similar to the EDA grant, this program does require a 20% non-federal or applicant cost match. And again, that would be submitted May 26th of this year. Kind of moving forward, an additional service transportation infrastructure grant program we have identified potentially for the city is DOT's Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development program, or the BUILD program. You may be familiar with this program in the past. It was called RAISE under the Biden administration, and the second Trump administration has been changed to BUILD. This is one of DOT's, I would call, flagship grant programs that have been around for a while, and they run yearly. These are for more comprehensive infrastructure projects. Having to do with roadways, public works, culverts, anything of that nature. As you can see, the award ceiling is much higher, somewhere closer to $25 million. But most awards range between $1 million and $25 million. This program is also split up into 2 separate tracks. There is a planning track that would help with design and engineering costs, putting together a benefit cost analysis, as well as capital projects for those actual construction and capital dollars. As you can see from the slides or on the memo in front of you, the submission deadline wouldn't be until early next year. But given how comprehensive and extensive this grant requirements are to just apply for this grant program, this is something we would want to get started on almost immediately, or at least sometime earlier this summer. So I think those are a pretty good rundown of the 3 programs I've identified for you guys. But I think we'll pause here for questions from the commission.
could just jump in here real quick before questions. So just to clarify, if you guys are considering a 6-month extension of the Merch McIntyre service agreement, that would be at the same retainer that you guys are currently at. That would include obviously continued work on the EDA grant, which will wrap up obviously, as Charlie said, before the end of the month. Continued work on the Safe Streets for All, which is due May 26th. And then we'll obviously shift over to build planning, not necessarily within the 6 months would we do a build application, as Thomas noted. That would be due probably January 2027, as well as shifting over to that EPA brownfields if that's of interest. And then throughout the 6-month period, really would, if your project is selected by Senator Moran, there would be continued tracking, monitoring, and advocacy that Merch McIntyre would be leading for the city in regards to the congressionally directed spending or the earmark request for 1.6 million. So just wanted to clarify what that 6-month extension and continued fee would look like. And happy to take additional questions from the mayor or the city commissioners.
I have a couple questions. So the project we are doing with, or like we're presenting with Moran and the EDA grant, are they both for the Grain Mill electrical project?
Well, so I'll just clarify, the earmark is for a second entrance
Okay.
into the industrial park. And then, so that's obviously a construction project, and then the EDA is for the electrical build out for the mill and bakery specifically.
Okay, thank you. I was confused on that.
It's alright, I don't think I said that at the beginning, so thank you.
And then for the Safe Streets for All grant, you were mentioning the it goes off of like the roads that have fatalities and whatnot. I don't believe we have any, if not very many, fatalities in this town. Would that affect that grant?
From a planning perspective, it is not necessarily just fatalities.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarifying question. It would also be for traffic-related injuries, not necessarily just deaths. So we have seen in the past communities who don't necessarily have a high number of traffic fatalities also be very competitive for this program, essentially just reducing injuries and fatalities in communities across the country.
Okay. Thank you. Those were my questions.
I had a question about the EDA portion. You'd mentioned that it was important that, Mark is supportive and is kind of a champion of this project. Has he been supportive so far through the process and has been feeling like this is a good request?
Yes, sir. He's excited about the application for sure. We've presented in front of him multiple times. He, through those conversations, part of those meetings are to kind of suss out if he feels it's a strong application, if he thinks it's something, he wants to move forward with. And in every conversation we've had, he's indicated his interest in the project, his willingness to advocate and champion on behalf of the project, and his interest in reviewing our materials prior to submission to position us as best as possible.
And how competitive are those EDA requests?
It's competitive for sure. It's not quite the same as like some other federal grant applications where there's a specific number of awards they'll make. So since it begins regionally, that can kind of alter the competitiveness because some regions may see a lot higher volume of projects than other regions, and they take projects on a rolling basis and they essentially award until the funding is completely obligated or used up. So it's, we don't have a specific idea of how many projects will ultimately be awarded out of this funding bucket. I mean, overall, over $1 billion was available, so there's a large amount of money sitting out there. We, based on our interactions with Mark, feel that we have a competitive edge by going in by the end of April. Typically, you'll see the summer be sort of the busy time of year, and then the end of the federal fiscal year, which occurs September 30, really be the crunch of when they want to get as many projects selected and through the review process as a whole. Overall, we've been hearing from various regions. There haven't been a ton of investment review committee meetings so far, so we feel we're very much on the front foot here. And while it is a competitive program and the projects will be reviewed in headquarters by the decision makers here, our timing is strong and that we have, written the most competitive application we can.
So if there have been a significant number of EDA grants in our region, would that affect our ability to get the grant?
Not necessarily. It would essentially, if there's not a specific amount of money that has to be allocated within the regions. It would just be how many projects, within that June IRC meeting, are coming specific from, your region or from Kansas, or that Mark Worthman is bringing up. Can have some consideration from the overall committee over, what projects are selecting, but there's not like specific metrics behind what projects from what regions can be selected.
Thank you.
No problem.
I have another question, and I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this, but I'm going to. On these grants, these specific ones, are we the only community you're advocating for these ones? Or do you have multiple, people you're advocating for the EDA grant for?
So across the country, we do have multiple clients that are looking at both the EDA disaster supplemental as well as their traditional public works and economic development assistance program. But within your region, no,
Okay.
we are not advocating for EDA disaster supplemental projects in your region.
Okay. I was just wondering on the strength of the advocacy, if we're the only ones, it's a little stronger, I feel like. So, thank you.
No, good question.
That's it.
I think that's the only questions we have, unless Kent, you have anything else?
The one thing on the additional projects that are just potential at this point regarding the planning grant for Safe Streets for All would set us up to have that part completed is kind of like the building block for the following year or 2 or 3 years. It doesn't even have to be the following year. It can be within 5 years, or I don't know what the limit is regarding the Safe Streets for All. But within, then you have to complete that part in order to be eligible on the construction part. And the one part that comes up, or one problem that comes up that kind of fits that situation is our situation along Highway 24 and getting people to the commercial corridor on K27 as far as on pedestrian or other forms of transportation besides cars. I'm sure if you've driven Highway 24, especially at dusk, you've seen people walking on the side of the road. And no, an accident hasn't occurred just yet, but it doesn't mean it won't. And it's been a issue. I mean, it's not an expressed issue, but it's been percolating as far as when that's occurring more often or not. This planning grant, even though it sounds like a huge amount, and it does actually sound, but in federal dollars it's not, but it's in our size community, obviously it is, but it allows you to move forward in the process. So that was the one that has kind of a possibility, but I think to finish out regarding both the earmark and the EDA grant, there's still more work to be done. And that's what they've presented to tonight, and they've presented 3 additional things that they can obviously help with if we choose to do so, but it's not as critical regarding to move forward. What I would say is critical to finish out what we've started already.
Well, we certainly appreciate the partnership with you guys, and thank you for giving your tip of the hat to the employees that work with you. I know we think pretty highly of them, so hearing that they're good to work with certainly helps us out. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank
Guys,
you.
have a safe evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye now.
Thank you.
I do know that the talk of a trail on 24 is also a big point of contention with the foundation. So potentially something we could work with them too, if we get to that point in the future.
Right.
As though that's something at every strategic doings, is that comment.
So tonight at issue is whether or not to continue with Merchant McIntyre for another 6 months.
Yes, sir.
I'll ask the same question I always ask. Is it in the budget? Do we have the money for it?
It's there, it's starting to become
Yeah.
a concern, but it's, like I said, I think the benefit to the community is much more than what we'll get. And it's hard to say with 100% certainty that there will be something at the end.
I think at this point we almost have to follow through with this, with the EDA grant and the earmark. Because if we do get something from those, it outweighs it definitely. But I would be a little nervous about after that point. I just don't want to run out of funds. I don't want to sign a check we can't cash.
Yeah, I would say certainly, I think, you know, as we work through this process, another 6 months is just part of, you know, trying to finish this out. We've heard it from them. We're not gonna know anything for another couple months. I think the conversation is different in 6 months, depending on what even if we do get the money, you know, whether or not we wanna continue forward is another conversation that we'll have that, you know, it may not end, like it probably should end tonight, but, I'm certainly in favor of continuing the agreement with them another 6 months to get this wrapped up and hopefully get a grant to help us extend the infrastructure out there and hopefully have something really amazing happen for our community.
So when does their contract end?
April 30th. So the grant will have been submitted on April 30th, or by April 30th. Thanks in large part to Mid-States with KMEA, Mid-States Engineering. Done an awful lot of work on our behalf, presenting the preliminary engineering report. And because of that preliminary engineering report, they've been able to have productive conversations with what they said, the EDA representative, Mark Worthman, to make our application much more complete. But then, then they have this curing letter, which there'll be other things that will be asked and additional details that will have to be presented more broadly in order for them to actually award the project. That's what's coming up.
Is there anything else we as commissioners can do to help with these projects going through? Like, are there letters we can write? Are there calls we can make? Just kind of have to let it run its course. Okay.
The final decision is with a independent commission or a gathering. It's really not with any sort of elected officials at whichever level, federal, state, or local.
Cool. Are there other questions?
I would make a motion to, continue for another 6 months with the Merchant McIntyre limited contract, extending the contract.
Second.
I have a motion by myself, a second by Commissioner Howard. Mary, roll.
Cloyd, Artser,
Yeah.
Howard,
Yes.
Redlin, Showalter.
Yes. Appreciate that. We'll move on to item C, appointment to the Construction Advisory Board of Trades and Appeals, Jacob Lease.
this is the board that works most closely with building official Hildebrand, and he'll come up and say a few kind words about Jacob.
Hello, everyone, again. We had reappointments come up, and one member did not want to continue, so we needed another master electrician. Jacob asked about it, and he was pretty excited to do so, so he did have his application turned in. I don't believe I got it in the packet to you guys. I think it's sitting on my desk. I apologize.
Well, again, with a lot of these other things, we appreciate anybody that's willing to step up and take that role. Jacob, I know him well. He's a good guy. I'm sure he'd be a great fit for that. So I'd make a motion to approve the appointment of Jacob Lees to the Construction Advisory Board.
Second.
A motion by myself, a second by Commissioner Artser. Mary?
Howard,
Yes.
Redlin, Archer,
Yes.
Cloyd, Showalter.
Yes. Progress update, 6/21 West 17th.
Hello again.
Hello.
I did get over there on Friday. They called me for their inspection. They did get everything sistered up correctly. The door was on the cellar, and they were making their way inside the kitchen area to start working on the flooring system there. So there's progress.
It's been dried in.
They've done exactly as you guys have asked, so I think we should continue giving them the deadlines as that. Because mine apparently weren't anything.
I think we had too broad of deadlines for 'em.
So what is the next deadline we need to set?
On my list, once they have the floor done, it's working on the outside, getting the windows replaced, and then worrying about paint.
Do you know if they have the materials for the windows and the paint? Do we set another deadline without them here, or? Yeah.
Can't have us in direction.
Why don't we give them give 2 meetings from now instead of every meeting?
For the windows
And see what the progress is in 2 months, or 2 meetings.
The second meeting in May.
Second meeting in May. And see if they continue with this little,
See what
To
they
get
do on their own
something
without a set date, and just see if they continue to work at
Yes.
current pace.
It would be nice to at least have something in the windows, either glass repaired or new windows, which new windows would take a while, but I mean, at least fix the glass, repair the glass, and then fix the windows.
Okay, let's wait a couple meetings. Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Zach.
Move on to item E, pole purchases for the electrical department.
Hello.
Hello, Dustin.
Sent out bids, we need poles, need some 50-footers, some 40-footers and 35-footers. We're kinda getting pinched down on our vendors. Used to deal with Bell Pole Company. They won't deal with us because we're not a big enough buyer. They want us to buy 500 poles a year, stuff like that, so. With the 3 people with 3 vendors, Bridgewell, Coppers, and Stanion. Bridgewell, we've bought poles from several years. It just seemed like they're really high this year. Coppers is, talked to, Colby, City of Colby, and Coppers is actually, Brown Wood, which we used to buy poles from, but they got bought out by Coppers. Coppers is, currently putting a yard in Burlington, Colorado, which is good for us, because we're cutting down on shipping and stuff, and whenever we need poles, we could go to Burlington. So, they ended up coming in quite a bit cheaper. The last time we bought 35-foot poles, they were $556, so it's $100 cheaper per pole if we go with Coppers on the 35-footers, and I think they get, really, I think they have all of the bids, 50s, just getting tough to find people to bid, especially small people. I know Garden City is having same problems we have, and they, with how much. water
Buying more than
they
we
have.
are, for sure. Okay. Any questions, comments, or concerns for Dustin?
I'll move that we approve the bid from Coppers for new electrical poles.
Sorry.
I'll second that. Mary, got a motion by Commissioner Howard, a second by myself. Roll, please.
Hartser,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Redlin, Cloyd, Showalter.
Yes.
Thank
Thanks, Dustin.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to discussion items. Item A, set time for meeting to award bid on SRE building.
The snow removal equipment building that's been involved with FAA money. The project has gone out for bid and then received bids at the end of the month on April 28th. Darren, the problem that comes in is that the recommendation, because that's all we do at the city commission, is recommend the bid that we would like to work with to the FAA, and the FAA is the final decision maker on the award of the bid. They need the recommendation, our recommendation on the SRE bid by May 1st, because then it'll continue to finish out the federal year, and it needs to be done by all the things that they do after they award the bid by September 30th, as you heard from the previous presentation. What I expect is it will be would need a special meeting, 5 minutes, 10 minutes long at most. Basically to present the engineer's recommendations on the low bid for the SRE building. There's basically 2 active bidders, so there's not much to choose, and it can happen anytime you would like. These are the types of meetings that can happen before work, at lunch, after work, because it's a single item agenda. And there's really nothing else that, once you announce the meeting, and it's only for this specific purpose, you basically have to stick to that agenda. So, sometime between the 28th and 30th, if one of those days works better in time of day, or we could have it later in the evening, whatever would work for y'all.
Do we need at least 3 people there? So if we're all there, we'll be good.
Correct.
Okay.
At least 3.
Okay.
I'll go round them up on the motorcycle and bring Brooke here.
I'm free anytime.
Whatever.
April 29th at 8 a.m. April 29th at 9 a.m.
7 works for me.
8 would work fine for me. Just a little early.
Okay. April 29th, 8 a.m.
Sure.
On the 28th.
Isn't that at 3 on the 28th? So it does
The
have to
bid
be.
opening, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it's at 3, so you have to give Darren at least an hour to tabulate the bids.
On the 28th.
We can do it the 29th.
That's what I meant, was the 29th.
You
at
said
8
the 29th.
So the 29th at 8.
29th at 8 a.m.
And if that won't work, I'll let y'all know.
Okay.
And ask on a separate time.
I'm free anytime that morning. I just can't do the afternoon, so.
Okay. And like I said, it'll be howdy do. Make your recommendation. Motion to adjourn.
All right, move on to item B, reinvestment housing incentive district projects.
Or rural housing, and whichever acronym it's hard to get away from the rural housing, because that's what it started out as. We had a presentation last year from Connor Hampton for the MIH grant and we created an RHID district, which involved the property, the two parcels north of Topside Manor, and then also the parcel to the west of it. The mayor, Mayor Showalter, and myself met several folks on a web call this past week, and they are very much interested in going forward with the project this year. They will come and make a presentation, more formal presentation, at one of the May meetings regarding it. But the reason I'm bringing it up to you tonight is this may, because the RHID district involves using the increase in property taxes to help pay for some of the infrastructure regarding the housing district. They are working with some partners that have a modular manufacturer that has some automation. It's starting up in Wichita this month or next month, in the next few weeks. It's patterned after a facility that's already in Tulsa and can feed this, and it would actually be able to bring down the potential pricing on the models from what was presented in the MIH grant. And it was a very well-rounded presentation of information on it, and they'll present that to you as well. The thing that the reason why I wanted to present a little bit of information, one, to give you a heads up regarding it, but also since our partners in the RHID district, as far as the county and the school district, will be, we had started to talk about a joint city-county meeting, and had started to think about some dates regarding that, but the mayor basically gave direction saying this could really be a topic of discussion for a joint meeting, or that they could present to both the city and county, is what it came down to at the same time, rather than a subsequent, and to appear with at least a couple of them here in person to talk directly with them. So that at least gives you part of the reason why I wanted to bring up this information as an introduction. Mayor, did you have more to say?
Yeah, I would just add that I feel like, what at least we were presented the other night seemed like a little bit more palatable information than we got, I think, initially with the pricing points for the housing units. They had several different options that they showed us that looked like pretty decent homes that were at a price point that I felt like is probably more middle income. I don't know that $300,000 was initially what we heard of, for prices last year, and these homes would come in significantly less than that. So hopefully making them more attainable to middle income buyers. So I think that is the kind of housing that we need, not necessarily some of the higher end stuff right now. So I appreciated that. I think, they had several different ideas of how they would start the project, and I think one of the reasons we needed to at least start talking about it now was that depending on the options that they pitched, some of them would require some financial commitment on our part. So part of that was saying, as we look at the plan and the projects, need to be cognizant of those options. So they are excited to try to get a project started. They seem very positive and that they can get a project done and provide affordable housing. And I think that at least since since I've been here, that's one thing that I've heard has been constantly people in our ear needing to figure out how to answer this housing issue, so I think that could be our first step into finding some affordable housing to be built within the city.
And they went, but one of the things that will present on is, they were going to concentrate at the first regarding, 8 or a certain number of houses on the 2 lots north of Topside Manor, which only really sewer is not available to those 2 lots currently. But then also start the planning process, that they had professionals involved there as far as platting the land and start working on the subsequent parcels after that, and be able to have it ready if the number of houses on the first 2 lots, which those are 2 big lots, there'll be more than 1 house on them, but 3 to 4 houses on each lot. But if those sold right away, that they already in the process of having a plan to continue for a few dozen homes beyond that. So that's, when they have their presentation, they'll present more on that part of it. But that gives a couple different things. Gives first how they would be received with only a small number to start. And then, but then still be able to follow up if there is a good response to it. And start being able to go through taking off the various things that could be obstacles as it goes forward.
Well, I liked when they pitched the idea of not starting off with 30 or 40 homes, like, if they're gonna bite off a part of this project, starting small to see what the appetite is right now, I think is probably the best way to go about it. So it's important we don't get ourselves or them into anything that is gonna be a financial loss, so.
What brought their interest here? Because they're out of Wichita, right? So what brought them to Goodland?
Well, Connor Hampton, the financial person, is a relation into that, yes.
I thought so, but I wasn't sure.
But the other part of it is they want an example in western Kansas.
Okay.
As far as the home manufacturer. We have a few individuals locally that are able to do homes, but it's at a different level and it's for different purposes. As far as, the grain mill and bakery, when it comes to fruition, there's gonna be a need for some housing. What that is, but in order to get housing, you can't just sit here and say, oh, I want a house in 3 months. It's, you gotta have something, and different things done. And that's where part of the team that they had assembled was, the planners, the engineers, the civil engineers with PEC and work with our engineer, is obviously from the city side, as far as from EPA's, as far as to get the civil engineering done that would need to be done. And dividing the property, platting the property in order to get that accomplished. So that there isn't a barrier there that hang it up.
And they did have a member of the Hanson Foundation that was on the call with us too, that expressed some interest in helping with the project as well. So what their level of commitment would be, I don't know that they really committed to anything, but they're at least aware of it and are interested in assisting, so.
So they had a lot of different folks that are involved with different parts already, discussing with them how this would get accomplished. So, but as far as a joint city-county meeting, that's where Would you guys mind if staff went ahead and tried to coordinate that so that it could be included in any joint city-county meeting?
It'll be fine. It kind of goes hand in hand with this whole Second Street thing anyway, so yeah.
Sounds good to us.
I wanted to check with you first before tiptoeing down through the tubes.
Okay. Any more questions on the housing project? Okay. We'll move on to reports. We'll start with the city manager.
Don't have much. The manager memo and the financial statement for the first quarter is included in your packet. There's a reminder, and there's also the flyer at your desks regarding the spring cleanup on May 7th and 8th. Kenton will be, and his crew will be leading the charge, but there'll be members from a number of other departments also involved. And that's about all I have at this point.
Okay. Any questions for our city manager? All right, thank you, Kent. We'll move on to commissioner reports. I'll start on my left here with Commissioner Howard.
I've only got basically one thing. I'd like to remind all the city patrons to watch out for their water. Use your water responsible. Don't water the sidewalk or the asphalt or the street, and don't water during the heat of the day. Because eventually, in my eyes, there will be some sort of water restrictions coming at some point. Otherwise, that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Archer?
Yeah, we had our tour of our facilities, what was that, last week? 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
Recently, and I wanted to commend all our department heads because it's clear that there's pride in their spaces and in what they're doing, and it was really cool to see that. So thank you guys for everything you're doing, because it's clear you care about your jobs, and that's a big thing. So
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Archer, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. For the mayor's report, I would just echo what Commissioner Archer said. Thank you to everybody that participated in the tours the other day. Somebody had said something on social media about, you know, being happy that we went, and I think it's important that all the commissioners step foot in the buildings and see the infrastructure before we sit back here and make decisions on, you know, what kind of money we're going to spend or decisions we're going to make on those. So I think those are important tours to take. So thank you for helping with those and walking us around so we could see that. Well, that's all I've got. I would entertain a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else.
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Howard,
Second?
second by Commissioner Archer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.